Welcome to Free Media. I'm Robby Soave.
And I'm Amber Duke. American Federation of Teachers President Randi Weingarten expressed intense anger during a recent MSNBC interview regarding President Trump's plan to dismantle the Department of Education.
In a full meltdown, Weingarten criticized the proposal as a direct attack on public education, emphasizing that it would harm students, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds. Let's watch.
Why so many people are so mad about it, because they're just taking opportunity away from kids that don't have it. So billionaires, kids of billionaires, they have it. They go to private schools. Everyone else, 90%, go to public schools. Don't take away their opportunity.
So let's stay on the facts.
Sorry,
no,
I'm really angry about this.
No.
I'm just so mad.
Oh, well, you and I, and probably a lot of the viewers here, and everyone in libertarian world and conservative world, does not like Randi Weingarten because she is a hypocrite. What she is saying about taking opportunities away from disadvantaged people, from black children, she was for so many policies that cause the disadvantaging of people. She was the #1 force in favor of keeping schools locked down during COVID for as long as possible, longer than any other sector of life. School stays closed because of her desire to get to a totally fantastic zero COVID policy. There would be zero COVID. That's not a state we'll ever have on planet Earth anymore. So harmful, this disruption to kids' learning, and she is largely responsible for it. And then there's, of course, the school choice stuff.
Yeah, and I'll start with the COVID stuff because obviously it was worse for disadvantaged kids whose parents both work and they had to be at home doing remote school by themselves.
Zoom school, it's fine.
Right,
they can learn more about their families. Remember when some teachers union said, now they're getting that other kind, the home learning.
Yeah, and then you had, this gets into school choice, you had parents who were able to take their kids out of public school, put them in private schools that were still open and doing in-person learning during COVID. You had a ton of parents decide to homeschool their kids during the pandemic because they either didn't think that the schools were staying open enough for their kids or that they weren't teaching them the things that they would like to see, demonstrating the values that they wanted their kids to learn. But if you come from a disadvantaged background, you might not have those opportunities. Surprise, surprise, Randi Weingarten also opposes school choice, which would give disadvantaged students those opportunities by allowing the funding that you would typically spend on a child in a public school system to go directly to the parents to choose what form of education they would like to have their child access.
We are still collecting that funding. That is what's going to happen even if there's no education department. The education department, the federal funding is not even responsible for the majority of funding that goes to schools. It is mostly state and local funding. That money is still going to be collected. All we're saying is let's not have a massive, unwieldy federal bureaucracy getting overly involved in how schools are run, and let's have this money in an ideal world go to the families to decide on the best educational outcome for their kid. Every kid is different. Some kids will flourish in a traditional public school setting. Some kids would be better served by a private school. Some kids should be homeschooled. That's in accordance with their family values. That should be an option. Or some hybrid thereof. Sometimes at homeschool, or up until a certain year in class, you're homeschooled and then you're gonna go to high school, or vice versa. Or some kind of learning arrangement pod type thing. Those happened during the pandemic and that was fine. They were shutting down all the schools, so what if they said, me and a couple of the neighborhood kids will do it in my garage and this parent will teach history and this parent will teach math and do something like that. Or you can hire a private tutor for a fraction of the money that the public school system is spending. Like it's like $20,000 per kid per year in some failing school districts.
Right.
You could, that's per kid. You could get, so what, that takes 5 kids to pay a tutor for them, a teacher for them, $100,000 a year instead of just, like, that sounds great. That's more individual attention. That's better than the school system. And the #1 person standing in the way of that is Randi Weingarten.
And if you have money left over, you can put it in your kid's 529 plan and help pay for their college. Amazing. It all works out great, except what people obviously have to recognize about people like Randi Weingarten, who are at the head of these massive public sector unions, is that she doesn't represent students. She doesn't represent education. She doesn't care whether or not your kids are functionally literate when they graduate the 8th grade. She is there to represent the jobs of public school teachers. And if public school teachers are employed and getting a raise every year, that's all she cares about. It's not about educational outcomes. It's not about the health of the students. It is solely about representing the public school teachers.
Particularly their their job security, their benefits. Those are even beyond pay. Those are the really egregious areas.
And protecting failing teachers from getting fired, that's a huge part of it.
Yes.
All of that.
Yeah, keeping the hours very reasonable for them at a time where we have, math and reading scores stagnating in a lot of states. Not tremendous improvements being seen on these fronts despite the existence of the education department. The education department coming into existence in the end of the 70s, I think, has not coincided with some huge boost to reading and test scores. So many kids who come through public schools need remedial math and reading at high school. They need it for grade school. In college, they need it for back then. So something should change, and it would be to the benefit of the disadvantaged students.
We can use Columbia as a test case. If they're able to survive without the billions of dollars in grants that Trump is yanking from them, then it should be no problem for public
Take that,
school.
give it give it to the families.
Yeah.
Give it to disadvantaged families to
lower tuition.
To lower tuition. Right, that's the other thing. You give money to these schools, and the tuition still goes up no matter how much money.
And I still have to buy my kid his own crayons to go to school.
Yeah.
Like, that's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
I went to a relatively okay public school. We were in a rural area, so it's not like we were Fairfax County or anything like that. But, we went to kindergarten and we still had the supplies list where all the parents had to provide their own supplies for their kids. We all had to buy our own protractors, our own crayons, what have you. And yet every year the funding increases and the supply lists, I think, get longer. So it's interesting how that works.
I still have a supply of crayons and markers and colored pencils in my apartment for doing my own terrible art. Just absolutely abysmal.
That's great. I'm happy for you.
Thank you, Amber. You can catch more free media tomorrow. We'll see you then.